We have marine collectors Elliot here today to help us with some more things in the industry, which is quarantining the industry. Now, I'm not talking about telling you guys to do it at home. I'm talking about the standards that we should expect, or what maybe we should expect in the future, and how do we get there? What do you guys want to see? We're going to dig in that today. Start with the number one question here. Quarantining the industry, what does it even mean?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're seeing this new wave of quarantine vendors, and it's the direction that I think the industry should go, the industry as a whole, just because we're going to get away from having these fish that we're caring for as pets. We're going to get away from seeing them as objects that we're just constantly replacing to more as pets that we're caring for and actually taking the time to treat them appropriately. If we're quarantining them, obviously we're going to be investing a lot of time, money, and effort into it. We want them to do well. It's not just we'll try it out, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. It's just a more sustainable approach.
This kind of gets to the mentality of the 80s, if any of you guys were still alive back then, where puppy and dog mills and kitten mills existed, right? Well, we don't do that anymore. Because we have a different level of respect for the animal, and we also have a different outcome for our families as well. So now, the same thing with aquariums. How do we step it up? And to me, quarantine in the industry, what does it mean is a good question, because quarantine can mean so many things. It could be I looked at it twice this week and said it was good. It could be I watched it for 2 months. It could be medicated. It could be tank transfer. It could be 8 million billion things. But if you actually look at what quarantine means, it just says quarantine. It really doesn't. We strive for healthy fish. But also you can see, you've talked to me about the word condition, which is a little bit more all-encompassing.
Yeah.
What does condition mean to you?
All right, so in my mind, I'm thinking about a fish that came fresh from the ocean. It's going through quarantine, medicated, and prophylactically treated. But then outside of that, we're also conditioning it to tank life. That means that we're getting it adjusted to foods. We're making sure that it's eating aggressively, so that way when it goes into its forever home, it's not just, throw it in there, hope it does well. Let's actually take the time to make sure that it's going to do well and make sure that it's adjusted to captivity, not just, it eats kind of, we'll put it in the tank. It'll figure it out.
Okay, so I'm on the fence on this one because I believe what you just said is accurate. It's not just about the parasites; it's about conditioning it to tank life. That's a great sentence. Okay, but man, you better bullet point that out, because the word condition is even more ripe to be misused than the word quarantine, right? And so one of the things that we were talking about is well, what if it just said really what it was, which is 99% guaranteed to be free of ick, velvet, brook, uranema, and flukes.
Yep.
Okay, 100% is what we strive for. 99% is the reality. Okay, if that man, I don't really care how you did it. I don't even want to research how you did it, to be honest. I just want to find somebody that I trust that knows how to do it well and will give me that guarantee. But if your conditioned thing said, condition means conditioned to tank life, eating, and guaranteed to be 99% free of these things, I'll pay extra for that, right? And that's where we get extra, we get different from the puppy mills of the universe into, hey, this is an animal that's asking us to respect it and care for it. We're bringing it into our home, and we're introducing it to the other animals that ask us to care for it. This makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So I'd be curious to see what all of you guys, this is about quarantining the industry and about the future, what you guys want to see from where you get your pets from. And I think that, it's your feedback that will drive the future.
Yeah. So
you should tell us what you would like to see on this, including nothing, I'll just do it at home, or nothing, I'll just close my eyes and hope for the best. Seems to have worked out so far. You can say whatever it is that really means to you, because it's an open dialogue.
Yeah.
All right, next question here. What are realistic expectations from not doing quarantine at home yourself, but doing quarantine in the industry, meaning somebody did it for you?
Yeah.
Whether the fish store or somebody like yourself.
So I think this is kind of a loaded question because it's going to take time. The industry that we're in, it's dependent upon a higher turnover, but I think that the industry would still be sustained if we were maybe charging a little bit more per animal, but they were treated a lot better. Instead of 100 green chromis in a box coming from the Philippines, maybe there's 10, and they're not in such rough condition. They're not carrying Uranima all the time. The fish might be, $15 instead of $5, but at least it's going to live. How awesome would that be?
Okay, so I once talked to somebody at a trade show, and they said something that was like really set up the bulb for me, like an epiphany of how messed up this is. Okay, it is okay if you know what the wholesale is on these fish and what they're sold for, like at wholesale and what they buy them for, like there isn't really a whole lot of money here.
Yeah.
And what they said was, man, most of these fish, all the way from flying from Indonesia to LA to the fish store to everywhere, there can't be more than 1 man-hour's worth of money into this. 1 man-hour before it is unprofitable.
Well, all right.
Is that the threshold? Because that sounds a lot closer to puppy mill than taking care of pets properly.
No, the thing is that it comes down to what the demand is, right? And the quarantine conditioned, avenue in the industry, it's growing. And, we're seeing more and more people do quarantine, which is fantastic. But the infrastructure is not there yet to support an enormous industry shift, right? If you look at what the fish costs, most people, especially if you're even comparing it to freshwater, saltwater's eons more expensive, right? It's just, I think it's going to take time. Obviously the puppy mill puppy is, $500, and maybe the one from the breeder is $5,000, but they're not even the same, caliber of animal, and they're obviously being treated substantially different.
So one of the things we talk about realistic expectations is somebody's doing this now in a commercial environment. They're bringing the pets in, they're putting them in there, they're medicating them. And when I talk QT, I'm talking about the 99% elements. Let's make sure they're free of these pests, right? They're going to go through all those stages. It requires, I actually joked that, basically what your business isn't selling fish, it's renting little fish apartments for 3 weeks at a time, because really what it's that fish has to sit there for 3 weeks, man, to make sure that it is free. And if it isn't free, it's going to be even longer, right?
Yep.
Okay, so it's not cheap and it's not expensive. So, but we gotta have, or it's not cheap. It's actually expensive for you to do, but it's the right thing to do. So, realistic expectations out of the store here is also tied to one fundamental thing, and I've said this before, and I feel like it's dangerous to say it out loud, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's 100% true that the supplier of the most pets is never the best supplier of pets. The supplier of the healthiest pets.
Yeah.
I'll say it again. The supplier of the most pets is never ever the supplier of the healthiest pets.
Yeah.
Because it's just not feasible to be able to do what you do at huge scale. So, you have kind of a niche business that really helps people curate their tanks, helps them figure out, what it is they want in their tank, tell you, no, that's a dumb idea, don't mix those things. This is the introduction you should do, and how do I help you get these pets? And what it sounds to me is a lot closer to if I went looking for a dog breeder, that was recognized and, had put all the animals to get the shots and made sure they were parasite free and heartworm free and free, flea and tick free and all that stuff. Well, that's expensive, the breeder. But even if that breeder wanted to scale their business, as soon as they started trying to produce a massive amount of puppies, it all falls apart.
It's funny. What jumps to mind is I started marine collectors in my dorm room when I was in college. And I think as a business, it was substantially more profitable to do it at small scale than it is to do it commercially.
It scales apart.
Yeah, because there's certain things that are easier. You accumulate buying power and you can bring in shipments of fish, and it's a lot easier to get certain fish when you're buying a lot. But in terms of managing a commercial facility that does quarantine, it's incredibly difficult. And I'm not just talking about for me, I'm talking about for anyone. And that's why the price is usually substantially higher. It's not just that you're paying for the fish. Like I stopped telling people we sell fish. We're a service business. We are selling the service of holding the fish, quarantining it for 2 to 4 weeks, making sure that it's clean before it goes out. We have a base charge, and it's like that's just what we need to at least not be losing money. It's not that we want to be charging like some of those fish. Like people ask me for green chromis all the time. I tell people all the time, don't get them from me. It's just not worth it. You could get a school of them and do it yourself for the price of one from me.
I actually said the opposite today because I love seeing the green comus shoot in and out of the acros as a school, right? It's like one of the coolest things. It just reminds me of a real reef more than anything else.
It's a very cool dynamic.
Yeah. Okay. And so, yes, man, I might add, $100+ to each one of those fish to rent out one of your cubes essentially and have you care for this fish for the next 3 weeks, feed it, and have to replace them if necessary.
Yep.
And don't care, man. Like that thing is actually cooler than a couple of corals that I would have gladly paid the same amount of money for.
Yeah.
And if I don't do this, I'm probably going to introduce Uranema and crap to my tank, right? So if I want that thing, it's the right way to do it. All right. So one of the things that comes up, we're going to hit like a little bit later here, but like in the spirit of the biggest place to do this is not always the best source of the healthiest bets. The fish store actually seems ripe for this to be the small business that can do this exceptionally well. We're going to hit on it. The biggest barrier here, and I'm not going to pull this punch, is they don't believe that anybody's willing to pay for this service.
It's
We'll
funny.
get to it in a second.
Okay.
We're
All right.
going to hold on to that. But you think about whether or not you'd ever really pay for this service, because the small business being the fish store is probably best equipped to do this as long as we funded it right. Okay, the next thing here is what does success look like with quarantine in the industry? Paint the picture of, man, we're doing this well.
I personally would love to see, the majority of fish come in, them be in good condition. They were caught sustainably. They were caught correctly. They were held correctly overseas. They were packed in the right way that, they're not overly crammed in a box. Then when they get to us on the mainland or in the States, they're being treated, quarantined, and then sent out because, I think that a lot of people, especially when they're just getting fresh fish, from any store, you're going to encounter some loss, particularly when you're new to it and you don't know how to identify parasites, you don't know how to treat for parasites. So I think it's just going to be one of those things where it's going to take a lot of time, but that is the direction that I think it needs to go. But obviously, if you are going to be occupying the same costs to get the fish from those parts of the world, you're just going to have to pay a little bit more per fish, and it's whether or not the market is going to accept that or not.
So I'm going to speak for a bunch of people out there. Not one person, man, wants this hobby to be any more expensive than it is. Done deal, close the door. But at the same time, man, like not one of us wants to introduce disease and stuff, and not any of us are really comfortable with like any mortalities along the way. We'd like to reduce that.
Yep.
We'd like to make our hobby something that we're proud of. And so how do we transition to that? And here's one of the pieces to it is nobody's ever going to take the inexpensive fish away from you. That will always be out there. There'll always be somebody willing to sell them that way, right? And like, kind of treat the animals like a commodity. We'll just, as long as I make $3 on it, I don't care. And in fact, if they died, it really means I get to sell an extra one.
Yeah.
And like that is a terrible mentality that will never go away in its entirety. What we need to do is make that the minority. But also for the people that want to buy from that and do their own quarantine at home, that will always be available to you.
Yep.
Nobody's ever going to take that away. But what we would really like is for everybody else to like, hey, you know what? I'm going to actually have this pet probably for a decade. And so, honestly, man, whether or not I paid $30 or $180 for it is kind of immaterial.
Yeah.
And it's material at the time when I want to load up the tank with everything and I got a limited budget.
Yeah.
But if you just kind of string it out a little bit and actually enjoy the process instead of trying to create the Insta tank and it's actually pets, like I would never go and buy 16 puppies all at once. That'd be total pure chaos,
Yeah.
right? In fact, I'd probably never have 16 pet dogs at all. But even if I was going to get 3 dogs, I wouldn't get them all at once, man. That's chaos.
Yeah.
I'm getting them strung up over time. And it's not just chaos, man. There's costs of getting the kennels and all that crap. I just wouldn't want all those costs at once as well.
Yep.
So it's the same thing here as we got to think about it in that frame of mind. What does that success look like? All right. So here are another couple of bits about this, though. Quarantine in the industry. What are the challenges that an operation like yours or a fish store wants to do this? What do they face?
Honestly, it's just the labor and the work that goes into it. The amount of, like, for us, it's water changes. It's like the main thing that makes the fish expensive. We change over the entire warehouse twice a week, 100%, everything. I think that the challenge isn't so much getting the work done in terms of quarantine. I think it's more just seeing if the hobby or the industry is going to be able to accept the change, because the problem with quarantining fish is that you're basically destroying your own business as you're creating it. Because let's just say I stock a tank, right? 100-gallon tank, maybe a dozen fish go in there. If there's no disease, none of them die, that's it. The tank's done. I'm not ever selling that person a fish again.
I argued with you about this. I like that. I hate that mentality, because it's like, I'm sure some bad actors out there have that mentality. Mm-hmm. But like, the reason that I don't believe that is because you've seen it already with me. Mm-hmm. I finally used you to get my fish, right? And now how many people have I gone and recommended you to? Because once you, and I recommend the breeders where I've got my dogs from too, because I had such an awesome experience with it, right? Okay, so, but I definitely wouldn't recommend the pet store we bought a Pomeranian one from once, because, man, did that go bad.
It's always at the vet.
Yeah, my ex-fiance had 2 Pomeranians, one of them from a breeder, one from a vet. One of them cost 3 times as much, but the one from the pet store ended up costing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in the end, because it was unhealthy, man. Pet so many vet bills. So it just never really paid off. But that, I think, is one of the challenges of that operation is we have to raise the knowledge of I think part of that's an earlier conversation of, if you just call it quarantine, man, it just seems like garbage to me. I just don't believe any of it, and I especially don't believe it from the super big entities, because it's just impossible for them to do that, especially if the thing is drop shipped. Yeah, I just don't believe it, and so I want to see that finite list, man. What are you getting for this? What am I actually paying for when I'm getting a healthier pet? I know what I'm getting with my dog, but what in this case am I getting? Because it still looks like a fish in the end of the day. Okay, the next one, quarantine industry. This is actually part of, if you could answer this, you would be doing Elliot such a great service, is quarantine in the industry. What would you prefer to see? Finances, a finance charge for the fish, or a charge for the fish, or a service for the fish. And so what that would look like is, hey, is my fish that would otherwise would have been $50, should it be $50 plus 150 or something to care for it, or should it be $200? Because the reality is when I see $200, most people who don't know you and just if they stumbled on your website and saw $200, like, man, that guy is robbing us. That's the only thing that could come to mind, possibly, right? But if I actually said, hey, instead, that guy is actually going to take your fish. He's going to rent out its little apartment in his facility for the next 3 weeks. He's going to feed it, care for it, and if need be, even replace it and ensure that you get a healthy animal for your house. Is that worth the $100? And what is the charge that you have?
We have a base charge of $150.
Okay, yeah,
that's $150, including the cost of the fish.
I guessed correctly. So the $150 there, is it worth that to get what I'm looking for? Yeah. Because I think the $200, man, in my mind, like you're messing this up. The website should say $30 and below it a little check box that's mandatory that says, I understand I'm getting these list of services with this fish when I shop here. And they cost $150 a fish.
Yeah.
Tell us what you think. What do you think, man?
I mean, it could go either way. I think that one is a little bit more comprehensive. Like if you don't know what we do and you just are looking to buy, it'll kind of just explain it, outline it right there for you. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what people say.
Okay. Let us know, because you're not just saying what you'd like to see from Elliot. You're saying, what would you like to see from the rest of the universe?
All the other people who quarantine too. Like, it's going to set the precedent for how the industry will move forward too.
In that spirit, man, you're not the only one that does this. Who else does quarantine online?
TSM Aquatics does quarantine. Reef Pro, I actually really like what Reef Pro does. I think there's another one, it's Dr. Quarantine Fish or something. It's on Humble Fish has like a list of all the quarantine vendors on its forum.
I haven't seen that actually.
But I mean, it's not just me out there. Like, there's a ton of people that do it. Honestly, stores are starting to catch on to it too. Like, I do consulting for stores and service companies, and like I help them put protocols together for their stores. So chances are, maybe you'll have a local fish store that does it too.
Yeah. It's funny because when you first talked about doing this episode, you're like, are you okay if I actually share some of the other people that do this great? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm sure everybody would love to. And the reason is because, like, you have your core clientele. People buy from you. You're not having to go out of business sale. And so, like, everybody would like more sales, but more important than that, can we change the way that we do this for the future generations?
Here's the thing is that, actually, I don't know if I should say this, but marine collectors is just an extension of my hobby. Like, if I was not as obsessed with fish as I am, there would be no marine collectors, because it's, I work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it doesn't feel like work to me, but if it was just a business, it wouldn't be there. And it's more about, let's change the way that this hobby is going, because, that's my obsession. I want to see that change happen. And it is happening. It's just, it's going to take some time.
I feel the same. Like, I've been doing this I've been teaching people about reefing for 20 years now, almost, man. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's like 18 years or something. I don't know. It's been a really long time. Learning about it constantly. If I didn't have a passion for this, I would have long since lost interest in it. It was interesting because Jen from New Wave, actually, I was talking to her about this the other day, and she's like, Ryan, I know without even saying it, you were the kid that took everything apart just to see what was inside and how it worked. And like, reefing is the perfect place for that kind of energy. Because it's just like, there's so much stuff to learn. There's so many ways to do this better than we used to do it. And like, the ways that already, the conversation that we're having today about this, I guarantee in 10 years will be, I can't believe that we did it any other way. Because I look back at 10 years ago and 10 years before that, and like, you look back, like, I can't believe we did it that way. I can't believe when I started this, people didn't know what two-part was or how to use it. That was real just 20 years ago. And so now we just keep learning. And like, even though then, still, when we did the episode on ozone, like, this was a real thing 20 years ago. We're still learning about it, still looking inside the box, trying to figure out how it works. And in this case, looking how do we provide healthier animals that we're more proud of. Okay, this is a big question that I said we were going to lean into, which is quarantine the industry. Can this be done in a store? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I personally think it's actually going to be even more beneficial for stores to start doing it, like in the same capacity that I do, in which you are curating stocking plans for people. Because, I think that a lot of stores, they buy a fish with the hopes that, okay, well, I'm going to bring this fish in and hopefully I sell it before it dies. But when the flip side of it is, you get a customer that comes into the store, they say, hey, I want this 180-gallon tank, and I want these fish, these fish, these fish. That store can say, okay, well, why don't you put these ones in first? We'll have you pay for them, put the order together. We'll go get those fish specifically for you, quarantine them. You pick them up when you're ready. take them home, and then we'll get started on the next batch, and then you're just stocking the fish that way, opposed to, well, let's hope it sells before it dies, That way the fish is going somewhere, and then it's going to go somewhere,
This is the couple of ways that I imagine this. The current belief that everything in the store is quarantined and you can just pick it up at the right exact moment isn't really viable. It doesn't really work that way. You can't just put it in the copper and call it done, right? And so in reality, it needs to have gone through the protocol and then stay in the medication, but the medication is kind of harsh. So you can't actually, now the fish store has to hold it for 3 weeks before you could ever buy it, right? And that's assuming that it doesn't show any signs of anything.
Yep.
Okay, and then at that point, the fish needs to stay in that medication until somebody comes along and actually buys it. That's just not realistic or good for the animal.
I mean, the medications, if they sit for too long, we tell people once the fish are done, they got to go. We want to get them out just because long term it'll cause organ failure if they sit for too long. Copper poisoning, it'll happen super fast. One day it could be totally fine. The next day you can see the fish and it just doesn't look right.
Okay, so I see this as a couple of different options, and there might be more, by the way. Share them if you got them. Is what if there is your typical wall of impulse pet buy? I mean, that's just, I'm calling that, and it's just reality of what it is.
Yeah.
It's an impulse purchase. I'm going there hoping that I see something that I might want to buy, or I'm picking up carbon and I just happen to see that goby wink at me and I buy it, Okay, but now there's two options. One, I could, a bunch of options actually. One, I could just buy it, impulse, bring it home and impulse, just throw it in the tank and hope for the best. That happens a lot. Or two, I could buy it, bring it home, and go do the 80-20 protocol and feel pretty good about what I've done. But also, instead of spending money buying all of that quarantine system crap, which will be a few $100.
Yeah.
What if I just paid the fish store a service, and there's a wall over there where they do the actual 3-week quarantine protocol, and I can come pick the fish up in 3 weeks, or even better, man. This just kind of combines getting closest to the actual source of the fish, right? So minimizing the amount of storage and run around and all that stuff. What if, I went into the store and I got a good relationship with Jerry, and I just say, hey, Jerry, I'd like to order a long-nosed hawkfish. And so he orders it for you. It isn't sitting there waiting. Orders it for you, immediately goes into the process, and as soon as it's done, you come pick it up. Okay. Again, now this is a smaller operation in a fish store environment, which means I think that this could actually be done well with one caveat. None of the stores believe anybody is willing to pay for the service.
That is the problem.
Nobody believes this.
That's the barrier to entry is tapping into that particular clientele.
Everyone believes that we just want to hang on to the old ways, and we don't care about the mortalities, and we don't care about the disease going in our tanks, and we just don't care at all. And I just don't feel like that is really universally true. And what we need to do is take it from, the 80% that just doesn't care, right? To, okay, now there's 40% that care, they'll probably pay for the fish for to do it. 40% that do care, and we've provided a really easy way to do it at home, being the 80-20 method. And then there's 20% of people just don't know any better or don't care. But they're the minority now, right? I think that's probably the zone where we can all be really proud of our hobby instead of just desperately grasping on to, I just want it to be the cheapest possible on a pet that I'm going to own for 10 years. If it was something that you were going to have to replace, every single 6 months, then I need it to be cheap. But the reality is killing it is what causes that. Keeping it alive, it's actually cheaper.
It's expensive when you got to replace the entire tank too.
Failure is really, really expensive. And emotionally devastating.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's been plenty of times where, most of my personal fish are in the marine collector's warehouse, and it's walk by a tank, spot on the fish will catch my eye, and I'm like, oh no way. Somehow we cross-contaminated something, and then it's oh no, it's just a grain of sand. But your heart sinks as soon as you see that. It's just oh no, and I know it's full well possible, it's just inevitable possibility of keeping fish that are unmedicated in a facility where you have wild fish coming in and out all the time.
It's a
But,
difficult challenge.
Yeah.
You know what? One of the things we did, like we just mentioned that you didn't need to do this, but I think you're going to have to put the going out of business sale up because we just told about all the competitors, and then we just inspired all the fish stores to put you out of business. So hopefully somebody will still buy from you.
Yeah.
Okay, another one, man. Quarantine in the industry. This kind of wraps it all up with a bow. Do you believe the industry will convert? Do you believe, what do you guys believe? Well, we're going to ask Elliot here in a second, and I'll share my own opinion. But do you believe in the end that the industry will convert to either properly quarantining these things and treating these pets at home, or hiring a service to do it for you? Or are we doomed to just forever looking for the cheapest impulse pet world that we can possibly find?
Yeah. I think that it's going to change just because of how things have changed in the past couple of years. I don't think it's going to be fast, and I think that there's going to be a lot of resistance because the current infrastructure that's there and how supply chains work, it's really difficult to retrain the entire world to do something differently.
Okay.
Because like, it's not just what happens here, it's also what happens overseas where the fish are being caught, you know?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and get myself in trouble. All right, I've been getting
You,
in
not
trouble.
me.
A lot. I'll be frank, man. Getting the old curmudgeons across the line is going to be really hard. The people that have been running these stores for 30 years and been listening to how do I get this fish, and the Jerry down the street is charging 14 cents cheaper than you, I'm going to go buy from Jerry. It's going to be really hard for that person to believe that that's true and really commit to it and build it. So you're going to have to tell him you're going to do it. He's probably still not going to do it. Okay. But the thing that I told you earlier is every great advancement comes from unreasonable people that just don't care, right? Okay, unreasonable sounds like a bad thing, man, but a reasonable person would look at this industry and say, nope, the pressure is always on the bottom dollar, the cheapest possible animal. It is not on the highest quality, healthiest animal, and that's never going to change because if you looked at it objectively, it's reasonable to come to that.
Yeah.
But just like you decided that, you probably didn't think about it this way, but you decided to be unreasonable. I am going to go out there and do it anyway in the face of all of this and create a business that I can be proud of and does treat the animals right and treats the customer and the reefer right in a way that I can be proud of. And I'm going to try to make it profitable to the best of my ability so I can, still eat, right? And keep the business afloat. And so, like, it's unreasonable people that, and probably all young guys like yourself, that will go out there and say, you know what, I'm going to work towards a different future, and I don't care what's in front of me. I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah.
So in that spirit, because of your existence, I believe that the industry will transition, and I believe that, man, I don't know, I'm trying to peg a percentage. 20% or more of these fish will be purchased this way within 10 years. Within 20, 80%. So like versus where I started, it's caught on here. It's going to take a while. You don't have you can be part of the movement, or you could be the laggard. But
I think I don't know if it'll take that long, because like, it's already starting to happen. Like, you're starting to see fisheries be a lot more sustainable. Like in another video we talked about, we get fish from Kansas Marine, right? A lot of those fish that they collect are able to be sourced from other parts of the world for exponentially cheaper. And I'm talking like 40 to 1 type of exponentially cheaper. But the difference in quality of animal that you're getting is night and day, like, I'll give you an example. Pyramid butterflies, they cost like 20 times as much for the actual fish than getting them out of, let's say, Philippines or Fiji. But like, none of them die.
none die makes it a lot more valuable to me.
Like, yeah, it's pretty crazy to see, the vast difference just by the fish being caught and handled properly, right? Now, let's say that happens to all the other collection stations around the world. And then let's say that, wholesalers are, treating the fish and holding them a little bit better. The fish are already going to be, 90% better than what they were previously, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It would be nice to think that that's more of like a 5-year plan, not a 10-year plan.
Okay, I'll correct my my 10-20 to 5-10, but it will take a little while.
Yeah, it'll take some time.
But it's a mentality, man. It's like a whole shift.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it took to get away from puppy mills, but it took a while. And now
mm-hmm.
like if you told somebody you bought from a puppy mill, like the reality is even if you did that, you wouldn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Like if you walked in there and you saw a sea of puppies as far as the eye could see, I'd probably turn around and leave. I wouldn't say, value. So there you go. Quarantining the industry. You learned a lot about it. We are going to learn from you and your guys' comments. Mm-hmm. The big thing here is actually we do stuff like this. We invite guests to BRStv all the time. You can see the playlist right here. Elliot will be back. We'll see you guys all next week. So hit the subscribe button and we'll see you then.